Let's be honest, the whole world of generative AI and art feels, well, it feels like chaos, doesn't it? It's this incredibly exciting, but also kind of terrifying new reality. And it's forcing all of us to ask these massive questions. I mean, fundamental questions about what creativity even is, who gets to be an author, and what's real anymore. And to find our way through all this, we need something more than just another hot take on social media. We need a real framework, a philosophical lens that's built for the job. And that's what we're going to dive into today, a philosophy called pragmatism. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Philosophy. That sounds academic and dry. But trust me, this is anything but. This is a deep exploration into a super practical way of thinking that can help us build a real guide for this wild new artistic reality. So let's get into it. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to build this understanding piece by piece. First up, we're going to lay the groundwork. What is this philosophy of doing? What is pragmatism? Then, we're going to assemble what I'm calling the pragmatist's toolkit, the core ideas we can actually use. Once we have our tools, we'll bring AI into the picture and see how it really functions in the art world. From there, we dive deep into the really tough stuff, how AI changes the way we know things, the way we make things, and yeah, the way we fake things. After that, we'll tackle those huge metaphysical debates that everyone's having. And finally, we'll pull it all together into a concrete, usable guide for the future. So, section 1, let's start right at the beginning and build our foundation. What in the world is pragmatism? At its absolute core, it's a philosophy that is obsessed with the real world. It cares about what we do, about the consequences of our ideas, and about our actual lived experience. It's designed to pull our focus away from those endless circular debates about abstract definitions and plant it firmly in what is actually happening on the ground right here and right now.
Now this right here, this single sentence is the master key that unlocks everything we're going to talk about. Seriously, for centuries, people have been getting stuck asking, what is art? Right? It feels like a profound question, but it leads to a dead end. A pragmatist comes along and flips the script entirely. They don't ask what art is. They ask, what does this thing do? How does it function as art in people's lives? What kinds of experiences does it spark? What conversations does it start? What effect does it actually have on our culture, on our way of seeing? It seems like such a small shift in the question, but the implications are massive, especially when a technology like AI comes along and just blows up all the old categories. This little change moves us from an argument we can never win to an investigation we can actually do.
To really get this, we have to talk about the philosopher John Dewey. And this quote, this is absolutely central to his whole way of thinking. For Dewey, art isn't some fancy, secret object that's locked away in a quiet museum, totally separate from the messiness of real life. No way. He said it's part of the very stream of life itself. It's basically an intensified, more focused, more complete version of the experiences we all have every single day. Just think about it for a second. Think about the satisfying rhythm of a great conversation, or the pleasure of solving a difficult puzzle, or even just the simple joy of looking at a well-organized, clean room. Dewey's big idea was that art takes these raw materials of life and gives them a shape, a focus, and a meaning they didn't have before. And this is not some dusty old idea. This philosophy is very much alive and evolving. Thinkers like Richard Schusterman have taken Dewey's ideas and extended them in some really fascinating ways. He came up with this term, soma aesthetics. It sounds a little complicated, but the idea behind it is profound and simple. Our experience of art is fundamentally bodily. It's not just in our brains, it's in our posture, in our breathing, in all of our senses. It's about how we perceive things with our entire being. And this becomes so incredibly relevant right now, doesn't it? In our tech-filled lives, where so much is designed for just a quick glance, a swipe, a fleeting moment of attention. Schusterman pushes us to think about the art of living, how we can consciously shape our daily habits to be more aware, more meaningful, more fully embodied. Okay, so we have the basic philosophy down. It's about doing, about experience, about real-world consequences. Now let's get practical. Let's build the actual toolkit that we're going to use to take apart this whole AI art phenomenon. These are the core axioms, the working principles that guide a pragmatist. Think of them as our set of lenses or diagnostic questions we can ask about any piece of art. Let's really break these 4 tools down one by one. First, art is an experience event, not just an object. This is huge. It means the artwork isn't just the painting on the wall or the file on the computer. The art is what happens when a person actually engages with that thing. It's the entire event, the way your perception gets reorganized, the feeling it triggers in your gut, the way your attention shifts. The object is just the catalyst, right? The experience is where the art truly lives. Second, meaning lives in use and consequences. So what does a work of art do out there in the world? Does it force you to see your city in a new light? Does it start a vital public debate? The meaning isn't some secret code the artist hid inside it. It's forged in the work's real-world impact. Third, aesthetic value is not detached from life. This builds right on what Dewey was saying. Art isn't just for decoration. It can be a way to cultivate ourselves, to sharpen our moral and civic senses. It matters to our lives. And fourth, and this one is so powerful, criticism is experimental and correctable. This means there is no single final correct interpretation of a work of art. Ever. An interpretation is more like a scientific hypothesis. We propose it and we test it. Does it help us see more in the work? Does it make sense with our experience? And most importantly, can it be improved or even proven wrong? It turns art criticism from a verdict into a conversation.
This chart does a fantastic job of showing exactly where pragmatism sits in. It carves out this incredibly useful middle ground between two unproductive extremes. On one side, you've got essentialism. This is the endless search for the one magic ingredient, property X, like beauty or human intention, that defines all art for all time. It's a definitional straitjacket. On the other extreme, you have pure relativism, which is basically the anything goes argument. If someone says it's art, end of discussion. It's total chaos. Pragmatism avoids both traps. It says, look, art isn't defined by some timeless essence, but it's not a total free-for-all either. It's defined by what our communities, over time, actually treat and use as art, through our shared, public, and constantly evolving practices. Let's just pause and really sit with that for a second. What this toolkit really does is free us from asking impossible questions. We can stop trying to find a single definition of art that will last for eternity. It doesn't exist. Instead, what we have is a method. We have a way to look at the practices, the act of making, of exhibiting, of responding, of judging. And by focusing on those practices, we can build norms and standards for art that are grounded in reality, that are public, and that can actually adapt as the world and our technology changes. And as we're about to see, the world is changing very, very fast.
And now, this is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to take our philosophical toolkit, all those ideas about experience and practice, and we're going to apply them directly to this disruptive, fascinating, and incredibly complex force that is AI in the visual arts. This is where all that theory becomes very, very concrete. A pragmatist approach demands that we be precise. We can't just talk about AI art like it's one single thing. It's not. We have to ask a much better question. What role is the AI actually playing in this situation? Let's walk through these four distinct roles. First, and this is the simplest one, AI as a tool. This is basically a superpowered Photoshop or a smarter paintbrush. The human artist is completely in the driver's seat, setting the goals, and the AI just expands their ability to achieve them. Second, AI as a collaborator. Now it gets more interesting. Here, the human is more like a director or an editor. They provide prompts, they curate the outputs, they guide the process, but the AI is generating the core material. It's a kind of dialogue. Third, AI as an environment. This one is huge, and it's so often overlooked. The algorithms on social media platforms, the hidden biases in the massive datasets these models are trained on, all of this creates an invisible aesthetic environment that shapes what gets made, what gets seen, and what our culture collectively decides is valuable. And finally, number 4, AI as a critic or curator. We're already seeing large language models that can write artist statements, generate critiques, and create museum wall labels. This role directly impacts how art is understood and valued. You see? Each of these 4 roles raises a completely different set of questions and requires a different kind of analysis. Which, of course, brings us to this, the question that seems to dominate every single conversation about this topic. You see it in every headline, every YouTube comment section. Is it real? Is it art? Let's be honest, we've all asked it, we've all wondered. And here it is. Here's the crucial pragmatist reframing. Asking, is it real art, is a trap. It's the wrong question. Why? Because it sends us right back down that essentialist rabbit hole, searching for a timeless definition that we've already established doesn't exist. It's a vague question that can only ever lead to a vague and totally unproductive argument. So pragmatism helps us sidestep that trap entirely. It tells us to ask much better, more precise, more useful questions. Questions like, okay,
In this specific instance, which of those four roles is the AI playing? What specific kinds of experiences is this work producing in its audience? And based on that, what kind of standards or norms should we as a community build to govern its use? See how much more productive that is? So let's start asking some of those better questions. This next section is all about knowledge, what philosophers call epistemology. We're going to explore how AI fundamentally changes art as a way of knowing, a way of making, and, maybe most critically, a way of faking. How does AI change what we can learn from and through the artistic process? So let's start with the bright side, the really positive impact here. Pragmatism views all inquiry, all learning, as a process of experimentation and revision. And AI can basically put that process on steroids for artists. It allows for unbelievably rapid prototyping. An artist can test out dozens of different compositions or color palettes in the time it used to take to make one sketch. They can ask incredible questions like, show me this scene but in the style of a Dutch master. Now show it to me as a Japanese woodblock print. But this isn't just about going faster. It's a powerful tool for inquiry. Through this back and forth dialogue with the AI, an artist can actually clarify their own intentions. They learn what they really mean by a vague word like dreamy or menacing. It's a genuine process of discovery, of gaining knowledge through the act of making. Okay, but now we have to look at the hazardous side, the dark side of the coin. Because while AI can be a powerful tool for knowing, it can also be a tool for deception on a scale we've never seen before. We are, right now, rapidly losing our shared ability to tell the difference, just by looking between a real photograph and a completely synthetic image. Let's pause on that. Our entire ecology of evidence, the very foundation of how we trust visual information, is becoming fragile. For more than a century, a photograph has carried a certain kind of truth value, a baseline sense of this actually happened. When that evaporates, when any image can be convincingly faked in seconds, we have a profound problem with what we can collectively claim to know about the world. And this brings us right back to Dewey and Schusterman and the art of living. If art is supposed to educate our perception, if it trains us how to see and feel, then we have to ask this crucial question. What habits of attention is AI art cultivating in us? Is the endless, algorithmically optimized flood of instantly gratifying images training us for shallow, quick-scan consumption? Is it teaching our brains to just want the next novel hit? Or is it possible that it could be used differently? Could we build practices around it that actually cultivate deeper, more patient, more embodied ways of looking? The technology itself doesn't decide. The answer will depend entirely on the choices we make and the institutions we decide to build around it. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about knowing, now let's talk about being. We're moving into the realm of metaphysics, looking at those classic, thorny, almost philosophical questions about authorship, originality, and even consciousness. But as we've been doing all along, we're going to see how our pragmatist toolkit allows us to reframe these huge debates into something much more manageable and productive. The old romantic model of the lone genius artist toiling away in their studio, well, AI pretty much shatters that. So who is the author? A pragmatist pushes us away from finding a simple binary answer. It's not the human and it's not the machine. Instead, pragmatism asks us to look at the distribution of agency across the whole process. Who is setting the goals? Who is curating the outputs, selecting this one and discarding that one? Who is revising and refining the final work? And maybe most importantly, who bears the ethical and legal responsibility for what's created? Authorship is no longer a single role. It becomes this hybrid position, part director, part editor, part curator, all working in tandem with a powerful, unpredictable generative system. Here's a big one. AI makes novelty incredibly cheap. It can generate a practically infinite number of new images that have never existed before. So, does that mean originality is dead? A pragmatist would say, absolutely not. It just forces us to get smarter about how we define it. Originality can't just be about being new. A random number generator produces something new every single time, but we don't call it a great artist. No, originality is newness that matters. It's newness that makes a difference. It's a work that actually reshapes our perception, or forges a connection we didn't see before, or opens up a whole new way of understanding the world. The question isn't, is it new? The pragmatist question is always, what does this newness do? And now, let's touch on the big one, consciousness. Some of the latest AIs are getting so good they can pass what's called a Turing test. They can hold a conversation so well that a human can't tell if it's a person or a machine. But we have to be crystal clear here.
Behavioral indistinguishability is not the same thing as subjective experience. Passing a test for being human does not prove the system has a mind, or feelings, or genuine understanding. It just proves that it is an incredibly sophisticated mimic. Now, for the experience of art, the question of whether the AI feels anything is maybe a distraction, because the aesthetic experience happens in us, the human viewer. But the question of consciousness absolutely does matter when we start talking about things like intent and moral responsibility. So, let's just take a breath and recap this section. What all these big metaphysical questions reveal is that AI is not just another tool. It's what some people call an ontological engineer. That's a fancy term, but it just means it's a force that is actively redesigning our most basic concepts of what an artwork is, who an author is, and what originality even means. And our Pragmatist Toolkit is our guide through this. It constantly points us back to the real world, to our practices. We don't have to solve the cosmic mystery of consciousness. Instead, we have to decide, as a community, what we will agree to treat as the artwork, who we will agree to hold responsible as the author, and what kind of newness we will collectively choose to value. The answers aren't out there to be discovered, they're in here, to be built by our collective actions. Okay, we've come a long way. We've built our foundation in pragmatism, we've examined how the technology works, and we've wrestled with some of the deepest questions it raises. So now, in our final section, we're going to synthesize all of this into a practical guide. This is the so what section. This is about how we can actually navigate the future of art and AI in a way that is thoughtful, productive, and ethical.
A pragmatist approach to ethics isn't about finding a list of universal commandments. It's about good governance. It's about designing systems and norms that improve our collective practices. So here are 4 key areas we need to focus on. First, provenance and disclosure. To protect that fragile ecology of evidence we talked about, we need clear, widely accepted norms about labeling AI-generated content. We need to know where images come from. Second, training data and justice. These massive AI models are trained on the cultural heritage of all humanity, often scraped from the internet without consent or compensation. A pragmatist asks, what new systems of licensing, credit, and benefit sharing can we invent that will lead to a more just and fair creative ecosystem for everyone? Third, the value of labor. In a world of infinite, instant content, we must consciously protect and invest in the things that AI cannot replicate. Things like deep craft, slow looking, and the value of embodied human attention. We have to reward depth, not just churn. And fourth, curatorial responsibility. With this flood of new content, the role of the curator, whether that's a person at a museum or an algorithm on a platform, is more critical than ever. Their job is to elevate the work that offers a durable, transformative experience, not just the next shining object that provides a quick dopamine hit.
So, as we look to the future, how should we think about AI's role? We have 4 possible models. The instrument model just sees AI as a better tool, a better brush. It's simple, but it's incomplete. It misses the bigger picture. The collaboration model sees it as a co-creator, which is a step forward, but it still doesn't quite address the massive systemic issues. A pragmatist approach, I think, really favors the last 2. The ecology model forces us to see how AI platforms are entire environments that are actively shaping our collective taste. And the ontological engineering model is the most sophisticated. It recognizes that AI is a force that is compelling us to consciously redesign our fundamental categories of art, authorship, and reality itself. These last 2 models are the most powerful because they look at the systemic impact AI is having on our deepest habits of seeing, valuing, and living.
And so this is where we end up. Pragmatism doesn't give us a simple thumbs up or thumbs down on AI art. It doesn't give us an easy answer. It gives us a job to do. It gives us a task. The goal isn't to stop technology. That's impossible. The goal is to shape it. The challenge for all of us, for artists, for audiences, for critics, for all of us as citizens, is to build the norms, the institutions, and the habits of mind that will ensure this unbelievably powerful new force serves the deepest and best purposes of art, to give us perceptual depth, to expand our moral imagination, and to help us build a shared sense of truth, rather than letting it all devolve into a mindless machine that just generates a shallow, distracting, and ultimately deceptive spectacle. The future isn't written yet. It will be determined by the practices we choose to build, starting right now, together.